Now, President Trump says he likes the idea of giving some of the savings from DOGE back to Americans as kind of a dividend. Would you support that?
Listen, he's just telling a lie. He's not the one that had anything to do with the $1,200 refunds that people had during the midst of COVID. That was done by a Democratic House and Democratic Senate. Right now, what they're going to do is say, hey, we want to give you a refund, but Congress won't let us, because they already know that there's just no money for that. So no, we are not in the business of giving out money. And honestly, I don't know what $5,000 will do for you if you are unable to find a job, because I am telling people we are headed towards a recession because the United States government is the 15th largest employer in the world.
Okay.
Now we're talking.
Jasmine Crockett states, what's 5,000? What's 5,000?
That's a lot to somebody who needs it.
That's not at all what I heard her say.
Even so, it was a lie. It's crazy when literally they're finding so much money like that has not been allocated to the appropriate places. They found so many. Oh, they found these people being basically defrauding everything. So yeah, I think it is a good idea to try to give the money back to the people as much as they can. I don't understand what the problem is or why she would even think that that's a lie. I just think that it's just her being a Democrat and those same talking points over and over again, you know, and I can't stand her, honestly. Like, ugh.
Now I'm because I wasn't too sure. Is she saying no to 5,000 because she doesn't think he would do it, or is she saying like that's not enough or it's too much? Like, is she saying like
that's not enough?
She's saying that she don't think that he would do it. She said that's too high.
They're not in the business of getting money out.
She's saying that the amount of fraud that they are uncovering is not enough to give Americans $5,000.
She said it's going to send us into a recession.
Wow.
Well,
that's what she
it would be like if she could.
We gotta do one mic, y'all.
Sorry.
In that case, then if she can quantify what constitutes enough fraud, because in my book, you find one that's already too much, especially if you're playing with like people like giving taxes and you're frauding once, that's already too much. So if she could quantify what is too much or what is enough, she can have fun. But I don't see if she's saying like, oh my gosh, 5,000, like it's too much or it's not enough. Like she is far detached from the average American to say, what is like the question at the bottom of the screen, what's $5,000 when we're facing, well, when you're facing layoff, $5,000 helps you. So she kind of would have to watch her words a little bit. And now ever since Anton had noted her literally, and what was the other word? I forgot the other L word. Now every time it kind of like pops in my ears.
Literally,
every time she speaks. And I'm like, for a lawyer, I'm like, there are so many beautiful words in the English language. Like you have to speak so much legally. You cannot use literally first off as a lawyer. So I don't know why there's so many literally and like. Well, you know what? Like can be a verbal tick, whatever. But still, like I say like now. But for the English language, she can express herself so much better. And me as a second English being my second language, I could probably figure out a way of using words better than she is, and I'm not a lawyer, so
I don't like how she made it seem 5,000 wasn't shit when most Americans don't even have 1,000 in their savings. Like we're like these people that are getting laid off, so they're not gonna get what is it called, unemployment? Like, so there's no other job opportunities. Like, why are we brushing this out like 5,000 is nothing? Because people were jumping to the 1,500 when they gave it for the stimulus checks. So
yes, I was gonna say that. Like when there was those whole PPP loans or whatever else, like people were going crazy, and people go crazy even on their tax returns. So why would $5,000 for not filing, like just like that? The government saying here you go.
Why would you turn up your nose at that? Who's gonna say no?
So when I listen to the whole thing in its entirety, what I hear, right? Again, this is just what I hear. What I hear is she's really trying to minimize it because she believes it's a con. I do as well, right? And the reason for that is the fact that in order for you to pay $5,000 to everyone, I think the math was like $2 trillion, right? And so if you're going to give $5,000 to to every single person, and it's going to cost $2 trillion. How do you find that when you are going after things like USAID that is only $24 billion, right?
The same way they were able to send billions over to Ukraine and Gaza and all those other places. When she said that we're not in the business of sending money or giving out money, they're not in the business of doing that for the American people. They're in the business for doing it for everybody else and every other cause. So
let's be clear. Let's be factual, right?
If you're able to send hundreds of billions of dollars to all of these other countries, and if DOGE is able to find billions, and I'm sure they'll be in the trillions by the time that they're done in 2020, then they are able to give them to the American people.
So first off, let's try to just stay on topic and not talk about other aid, right? So if you want to stop aid from going to these other places, fine, that's a whole nother discussion, right? But what Donald Trump is saying is that we're uncovering all this fraud, right?
Across the board.
And they are
across the board, right? And so what Jasmine Crockett is saying is that, okay, if you want to do that, you're going to have to find $2 trillion, and you're not going to do it by going after something that's only $27 billion in the budget, even if you can be complete.
This is still
Secondly, in regards to the aid going off to other countries, please recognize that a lot of the quote unquote money going over is not money going. A lot of those are government contracts that are then being used over there. So it's not like we're taking a boatload of cash and it's being dropped off in Ukraine. That's not really how it works. I'm just saying. So
all right, let me jump in here really quickly because it's a lot of misinformation that's being spewed. First of all, it's being proposed up to $5,000 as a dividend payment. So the first thing that you have to do when you're trying to evaluate it, what somebody is saying is you can't just look at what Jasmine Crockett is saying, because Jasmine Crockett, she pivots based off of trying to make a talking point. You have to look at both sides. You have to look at both what Elon Musk and Trump said, and you got to look at what Jasmine Crockett said. You got to look at CNN, and then you also got to look at Fox News. You got to look at both of them, and then you got to draw your own conclusion. The fact of the matter is, in 1 month, they've uncovered $55 billion in fraud and savings. It's just the facts. DOGE is not done until July 4th, 2026. The expectation is for them to find trillions, okay? Secondly, she likes to boost this number and say, well, it would cost $2 trillion. When you re-quote that, that tells me that you're just using a talking point and you haven't done the research yourself.
I said that. I said I heard. So
I know. But then you got to start using real numbers, because first of all, it only applies to working age adults. Secondly, it only applies to people that's on the taxpayer rolls. Third, it doesn't include migrants. And fourth, you got to remove all of the people that's not supposed to be inside of it based off of the fact that they haven't contributed anything to the system, right? So when you start to remove that and you only apply it to working adults that have been paying taxes for a certain amount of time, what they're proposing is that you get a dividend, right, up to $5,000 based off of how much they save. So it's supposed to be 20% of whatever the savings is that they find to be sent back to the people. It's not just supposed to be a blanket $5,000, all right? And I think that the people would appreciate money's coming back to them instead of it going over to, even when you say government contracts, it's still for a specific purpose. So when you apply for a government contract, you still have to say, this is what we're doing over here. It doesn't mean that it's a valid reason for you to do it. It just means that now you're just doing it through contractors instead of just blanketly sending money over to Ukraine or over to Egypt or over to Israel and so on and so forth, right? So the point is that she's tone deaf. And she did not answer the question, because the actual question that was posed to her is, would you support something like that? She then pivoted in saying, well, it's not possible. Well, it is possible, because she compared it to the $1,200 stimulus checks, and that has nothing to do with what Elon Musk and Trump is saying that's a possibility of what they're going to propose. So when we have these conversations, we got to actually do the research. The goal is to get it as a 20% dividend payment, but ultimately to have long-term savings in the form of reduced government spending, because as Jasmine Crockett quoted, and as she pointed out, the U.S. government should not be the top 15 employer in the world. That means that we are bloated. That means that we've been subsidizing jobs and trying to prop up the economy and act like it's more than what it really is. And more importantly, it also means that we're overspending. And one of the reasons that we're overspending is because it's a bunch of fraud. And so I think that she's wrong. And it's so funny because she'll go after the proposed dividend, but won't go after the fraud. How come Jasmine Crockett has not spoke on the fraud? How come Jasmine Crockett has not spoken on all of the money that we were sending? How come Jasmine Crockett wasn't speaking on all of the money that we were sending over into these government agencies in Ukraine? How come she's not having any conversation whatsoever, but everything is based off of resistance to Trump? How come Jasmine Crockett is not talking about all of the taxpayer-funded things that had everything to do with DEI or sex changes or monies that we were using to have people transitioning over in prison via taxpayer dollars? It's funny because all of these Democrats spend all of their time being vloggers and they're appearing on every platform, but they're not actually having a conversation based off of what's best for the American people. I don't listen to these women. I don't listen to Jasmine Crockett. I don't listen to AOC. AOC is over there proposing that we help migrants, people that came over here illegally, evade ICE. You know, nobody cares until it hits their doorstep. How can y'all at the same time complain about inflation, the cost of money, the fact that they keep printing money in order to subsidize living and keeping people on the payrolls? I'll look at these people. I'll have people that was sending me emails today and was saying, Anton, listen, I know what you're saying. I mean, you know, I know people acting like all of these federal jobs, but I work at USPS and we in the post office and I'm in the one that's right here on 4th Street and we be playing cards and shooting dice and doing all of this shit. It's a lot of waste. It's a lot of government bloat. And I think that we not being honest about the fact that we don't need a bloated government the way that it is. And we have to operate it like a business or else we're going to continue to run up the federal deficit. We paying up to between $1 and $2 trillion a year in interest alone. That's a problem.
No, I mean, Anton, you make a very good points. And I do agree with you as far as, you know, and I live in the DC area, right? And so absolutely there is a common belief, right, is that if you get a government job, you can post, right? You may take less income, but you're never going to get fired, right? So there's a lot of slacking off. Absolutely. The only thing I would disagree with is that you cannot run government like a business, right? And the reason I say you cannot run it like a business is I've been in corporate America all of my working life, right? And one thing I know about corporate America is when you have a division that does not make money, right, or is not providing any, you know, a service that is going to help another division make money, they cut it out, right? And there's a lot of stuff that the government does that provides a service, right, where if you were running as a business, you wouldn't do it. And I'll give a small example that I commonly use, right? There are people out in these rural parts of America, and the cost to deliver mail to them exceeds the cost of a postage stamp. But we still want to provide that service to those people in America. We don't want to have, okay, you know, if you're in rural such and such, right, and you only got one post office in, say, 100 miles, so everything sent there is going to cost triple the postage. We don't do that, right? And so it has to be business-like, but it cannot be solely ran like a business.
Let me ask you a question.
Most of the stuff I agree with.
Let me ask you a question.
Yep.
Amazon has no places that it cannot reach at this point.
Correct.
How do they do it profitably?
Because they set up the infrastructure, right? So they have set up this infrastructure and they have the money to be able to deliver to all these places.
Which means that you then have to privatize some things that you can't do efficiently and you cut it out.
So, but if you privatize it, then it's not part of government. That's what I'm saying.
I agree, but it shouldn't be. Some things shouldn't be a part of government. So your example falls flat.
No, it doesn't, because you still provide a service. No. So, okay, again, right, down in North Carolina, right? Well, is it just, or someone has the fires in California, you just say, well, look, that ain't the government problem, like, bye, so what? Right?
No, that's not how that works. They actually pay into the system as taxpayers. And so we have things that are set up in place for disaster recovery and to help people in those instances.
But you would also limit that, right?
That is something that they have paid into the system for. They're not getting services in return.
But you would limit it depending on how much it costs.
You wouldn't limit it you would allocate it appropriate. Listen, we have the funds, we had the resources, but we're sending it into other places, and we were using it in migrants that never paid into the system prior to them getting here.
Even if you add up that waste, you still would not be running everything like
a
business.
You absolutely would.
No,
100%. We are, listen,
no,
how can you say that you can't run the government as a business when the majority of these states and cities have a credit rating?
Because you have to provide a service to the
people. Do you know why they have a credit rating?
I just answered your question. Because
no,
you have
they have a credit rating because just like human beings is based off of that credit rating for that city, for that state, is based off of their ability to pay back the money that they borrow, which means that they look at it like a business. Chicago just got their credit rating reduced, which means that they're paying more money on the interest that they borrow, that they then extend over to the taxpayers, right? Mm-hmm. The reason that we pay so much in taxes is because we are running the government like a business. That is literally the reason why we're paying so much in taxes. When we get these millages, when they do these proposals, over in Maryland, you down there in DC, so you know Westmore. What are they trying to do to the people? They're trying to raise the taxes, right? The cost of energy, so many different things over there in Maryland, which is one of the reasons why you guys are leaving. And if they didn't have if the reason that Maryland is so under duress is because they don't have governors and legislators that look at it like a business. When you're looking at it like a business, you have to do two things. Well, actually three things to run a city successfully. The first thing that you got to do is have public safety. The first thing you got to do is have public safety. The second thing that you have to have is great education. And the third thing that you have to have is great infrastructure. If you don't have one of those three things, your city eventually is going to fail. Now, with that being said, what's happening over in Maryland is that they are basically overtaxing people because they are not running it effectively like a business. They do not run efficiently. They don't have lean principles. And what's happening is they're now overtaxing the people, which is causing all of the biggest taxpayers to leave the state, which is basically making it a cyclical situation where they're going to be under duress and eventually they're going to run into bankruptcy. I know because I live in Detroit and that's exactly what happened. All of the greatest taxpayers left the state because they didn't have those three things. And what happened was it basically made it a drain on the city itself. The city started to eat itself. It ate itself. They couldn't sustain it because they didn't have the tax base to do so. Yet you still needed police officers. You still needed infrastructure. You still needed government. And eventually we had to file for bankruptcy. If you don't run it officially like a business, if you don't, we're not supposed to have bloated government. We're supposed to have smaller government. Reduce regulations, reduce all of the red tape, the bureaucratic nonsense, focus on public safety. Just the three fundamental things: education, public safety, infrastructure. All of this other stuff is subsidizing government jobs and making it seem like we got more jobs than we do. That's why
when your credit score is 500,
and if they don't start incentivizing businesses and making it a business-friendly environment where the businesses can come in and pay taxes and increase payrolls, it's going to eventually go the same way that Detroit did.
Anton, so first of all, I reject this concept that you're saying that Maryland is this massive place where people are leaving, because I live in Maryland. That's not the reality here. Just someone that lives here. Secondly, if you have a 550 credit score, will anyone lend you money?
Yeah, at subprime levels.
At 550?
Yes, you can get subprime loans at 550 all day long. Guess what? I worked at a bank for the last 12 years. I know.
Yeah, I used to be a loan officer. I also would, and there were limits to where your credit score had to be a certain amount, even for you to get a subprime loan. So
correct, but it depends on what you're getting. It depends on what you're getting the loan for. If you're asking me, can you get it for a house? No. You can get subprime loans on cars. You can get subprime loans on boats. You can get subprime rates on credit cards, depending on the type of credit card that you get. So you got to add the context. You can't just say, well, I'm a loan officer, because now that just tells me that you're talking about loaning for a home. You can get subprime loans on anything. Am I wrong?
Yes.
How am I wrong?
Because if your score is at the very bottom tier, you cannot get money for anything. No,
you absolutely can. 100%. You were a loan officer. I was UX UI, which means that I evaluated every single aspect of the bank. I went through and I looked at the services division. I went through the loans division. I looked at everything. You 100% can't. And that's when they manage risk. That's one of the reasons why we had the housing collapse in 2008 is because they had too many subprime loans for people that didn't qualify and it didn't balance. That's exactly why we had the collapse.
That's not why it's 2000.
It is because they lend to people and you didn't have to have any real credit. You didn't have bro, they literally created tranches that combined AAA with everything else that was subprime, and they made it seem like it was an actual real investment because it was making so much money off the fees that came along with it. The bankers was in on it, the credit rating agencies was in on it, and it created an environment where we couldn't sustain itself because it never happened. We never seen a collapse in the housing market the way that we did. All of those loans that caused the banking industry to collapse was subprime loans. It was qualified. So okay, so if they couldn't get it, how did they get it then?
It was the defaults. That's why.
Why was they defaulting?
Because they couldn't pay.
Which meant that they didn't qualify for the loan.
Okay, so but the fact that they were subprime loans was not the reason.
They couldn't pay.
The defaults was the reason, not the fact.
If you've never seen a car note that had a 20+% interest rate,
you got it, bro.
Where do you think that they get that from? Because it's not just based off of their ability to pay it back.
So they have low, but there is a threshold. For you to sit here and say that if you have a credit score that is the very lowest tier, you could still go get credit.
You 100% can.
No, you cannot.
Bro, you can go out to a car lot right now and get a 28% interest rate on a 540 on a 550 credit score right now.
Okay.
100%. I can name several different dealers that'll do it. I don't know if you ever heard of Mel Farr. Mel Farr is a former football player that created a dealership network who basically their specialty was loaning subprime to subprime lenders.
Okay.
Look up Mel Farr.
So you're telling me if I have a 400 credit score that you could go get out something?
Oh, now you want to reduce it to 400. Okay.
Well, bro, I'm sitting here saying
prime lending
at any level. I am saying to you, what you said was at any score you could go get a credit card or that's what you said.
Subprime lending is a real thing, and yes, you can get a credit card as a matter of fact,
at any score.
One of the ways in which you clean credit. See, I don't even want to get into this aspect of it, but we can deep dive into it if you want to. One of the ways in which you clean credit is as long as you can justify that your income to debt ratio, and you also at some point reduce it to less than 30% as far as what you're paying on your credit cards, your score doesn't necessarily raise. Okay. Your score does not necessarily raise 100%. You can even go in and get trade lines to where you can add yourself as an authorized user and they don't pay any attention to what your credit report was at all whatsoever. Bro, you can literally go and get a payday loan at 340% with no questions asked, and they don't give a fuck about what your credit score is. You can go and get a payday loan right now.
Bro, I don't know why
you can go and get it. You can go and get a credit one.
You can admit when you say something that's wrong.
You can go and get a credit one credit card right now, and it does not matter what your credit score is.
I don't understand. Anton, you made a simple
statement. What do you think that predatory lending is?
You made a simple statement, and that statement was you can go get money at any credit score. Now, FICO ranges go as low as 300 all the way up to 850.
100%.
Okay. 300, 350 is not getting you nothing. No.
Okay. All right. If you say so.
Okay. Yeah, let's move on.
I know for a fact you can.
Okay. I know for a fact you can.
No, you don't.
Because even for people with low credit score, they have to find a way of raising their credit score, and so they're gonna have some sort of credit card. It's not gonna be a typical as someone who has a regular average credit score, but it's gonna be a credit card nonetheless. There are some institutions.
You can go and get a secure credit card.
There are absolutely
unsecured credit cards.
That's not based on
$1,000. Get a secure credit card.
I'm simply pointing out an incorrect statement that
you can't get
credit at any credit score, and that's just not accurate. That's just not accurate. It's not.
What, the secured card part?
Secured part is not based off your credit.
Oh,
a secure card is basically you're putting down
oh
a deposit and they're giving you an allowance up to that. So if I put down $1,500, they give me a credit card and my max is going to be $1,500. So they're never out of the money. They're not basing off your credit.
Bro, you can literally get credit for anything.
Not at any store.
You can get credit for anything. You can go to Lending Club. You can go, bro. You have no clue.
Not at any score.
Okay. All right.
Again, the point that the topic we're talking about is running government like a business. And I'm just saying you can't run it. I agree with you
America is a business.
That you can run it mostly like a business, but not 100%. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Everything is business. War is business. All of that stuff. Everything is business.